look at what you're doing and think about what can happen if this thing flies out. You know, it's going to hit somebody or yourself, and you know, try to place yourself in a position where you won't get hurt. The guards are important. We've talked about these several times. You need to maintain the guards on the machinery. They're there to protect you from moving parts or from electrical components that may cause injury. The operating controls and switches, sometimes people bypass the safety measurements for the tools just to get the work done faster. You shouldn't allow that from happening, because then the machine can be on all the time, and if a person loses the grip, then that machine activated can cause harm. So that it's very important to maintain the controls and switches in good operating conditions, and not use anything that will, you know, render them unusable. The power tools, the wheel tools, these are important to take some time to protect yourself against items that can be flying out when you're doing grinding. The tool itself can move unexpectedly and cause injury in your hands or other parts of your body. So always, you know, manage that with care. Don't exceed the strength of the fastenings or the tool itself. You know, you have to know what is the capability and then use it right. Always use face protection. You know, turn the power off when not in use. It's important. Never clamp a handheld grinder in a vise, one of these devices that, you know, it's not designed to be secured. It's designed to be used in your hand. Pneumatic tools cause also a lot of injuries. You have hammers, sanders, chippers. These have parts that can fly out when you're doing work on the surface, so you have to be prepared. These operate with very high pressure airlines, so you need to keep your materials and connectors clean so they do a good connection and prevent the hoses from disconnecting in a unexpected time. Never dead end any tools against yourself. That means, you know, trying to see if it works, you use your hands or your head. You know, that's a bad idea. There's a video of a guy looking at the thing, and you know, come on. That's how you get a nail in your head, just because you're not doing it's common sense. I mean, you have to treat that as a loaded gun. And the principle is, you know, handle that properly. Always point it to a place where if it happens to go off, it will not cause injury or damage to any material. You have to prevent that from firing accidentally, so you have to really be careful. Here's a short video about power tools. These are the ones that use power to operate.
In the construction industry, there are a variety of requirements where fasteners are used on semi-hard or rigid surfaces. One of the most effective methods of securing fasteners to these materials is through the use of a powder-actuated tool. These tools are quite useful and perform a wide range of tasks, but they require training, certification, and extra care for use of these tools. This program is designed to review some of the basics of handling, storing, and using this equipment. However, all tool operators and instructors must follow their organization's policies and procedures and the manufacturer's recommendations for these tools and equipment. Only those powder-actuated tools that meet the design requirements of ANSI A10.3-1977 or local state approval codes may be used. The qualifications for becoming an operator depends upon current safety standards and each individual employer. Generally, no one will be allowed to operate this equipment without proper training, certification, and possess a valid operator's permit.
That's the most important part, to have training on it, be certified and be able to use it. Otherwise, people can get shot with those tools because of proper use. Welding and cutting is also another part that has importance in construction. As we saw before, people welding can be subject to harm because of the high heat, the light. There are many.
This program will discuss the general safety and health hazards associated with welding and cutting, and examine hazards and controls specific to oxyfuel gas welding, cutting, and arc welding. Whenever possible, the focus will be on relevant standards. The hazards associated with welding and cutting arise from toxic gases and fumes, radiation, electrical circuits, and flammable and combustible materials. Chemical agents commonly encountered in welding include the fumes of nickel, zinc, iron oxide, copper, cadmium, fluorides, manganese, and chromium, and gases such as carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen, and ozone. Physical agents include visible, infrared, and ultraviolet radiation, noise, vibration, thermal energy, and electrical energy. Fumes generated during welding and cutting operations may arise from the base metal being worked on, from coatings previously applied to the base metal, from the flux present, or from the filler metal being used. Other than fumes, other solid materials, such as fluxes and filler metal, may enter the air as fugitive dusts. Mineral and metal dusts may also be produced. Fumes may produce a variety of effects. For instance, metal fume fever is an acute disease of short duration caused by the inhalation of metal oxide fumes, such as zinc, copper, and magnesium. Symptoms include respiratory disturbances resembling an infection, influenza, fever, acute bronchitis, pneumonia. Chills, shivering, trembling, nausea, and vomiting may also occur. These symptoms most frequently occur after the first exposure following a period of relief, such as a Monday after a weekend off. In addition, welders exposed to fumes containing such substances as iron, chromium, chromates, lead, and aluminum may suffer damage to the lungs, lung cancer, possible nervous system problems, and irritation to the eyes, nose, throat, and lungs. Injuries to the eye occur when eye protection is either not properly worn or not worn at all to protect against the electrical welding arc. These injuries include keratitis, penetration, and retinal injury, such as welder's flash. Exposure of the skin to ultraviolet radiation from welding and cutting can result in a skin burn resembling a severe sunburn. Chronic dermatosis may also result from welding torch radiation. Hearing loss may be suffered due to hazardous noise levels or traumatic injury to the ear caused by flying metal. Another hazard resulting from welding and cutting is reduced muscle power.
So we see there's a lot of hazards associated with welding. We see that person welding over here and all the gases coming into his face. So, there's a potential for breathing in all these fumes that can be dangerous. Then we have the cylinders. We need to transport those cylinders in the correct manner. Don't let them fall into the floor or struck somebody else. You have to secure them with the proper equipment, and also don't mix them with combustibles that can cause an explosion inside the room. So there are some rules about moving these cylinders inside your job site. They should be placed in such way that they're not close to electrical circuits. Use the valves properly. Make sure that everything is in good operating conditions. Don't use them as rollers or supports. Take care of these cylinders because they may explode, and you have to treat them as dangerous materials. The You know, the shut-off valves, you got to be sure that they're operating properly, that you know, you're not going to have a leak of gas into the room. Use proper ventilation when doing welding. That's important. Cable should be free from splices at minimum distance of 10 feet from the electrode that's been used. And, you know, always follow good operating procedures. You know, follow the instruction from the manufacturer, train your employees, have good ventilation. These are important parts of welding. When you have a confined space, it's even more important because the person has very limited ways to get in and get out. So you need to take special precautions. You need to have maybe respirators. You need to have people monitoring the operation. You need to make sure that that person doing work in a confined space is going to be safe and can be retrieved quickly. I was doing some work in Colombia, and I visited a tank manufacturer. He had a couple of employees welding inside a tank, and just by looking at them, you know, the heat that was in that place, and those guys crumbled inside the thing, welding, said, man, that's a job I really do not want to have. You know, it's dangerous. It's something uncomfortable, and you have to take good measurements to protect those people. So we look at the toxic fumes that can be breathed in. So you need to really have good ventilation. Follow procedures. You know, train your employees. It's extremely important.